Anyways, guys, with the draft being a week ago, I think, again, some of the overreactions have simmered down. Maybe. So, yeah, let's see what these draft classes look like, because not all of them are pretty. And with that, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Fun NFL. Please like and subscribe. Hope y'all are ready for this 2026 NFL Draft team-by-team grades. You'll see all 32 NFL draft classes in this one. I would like to do UDFAs, but let's be honest, who really cares about that? Anyways, though, as y'all see, we are on the Bills draft class, so just keep that in mind here. But again, realistically, guys, you guys probably won't be seeing much of anything from me until that NFL schedule comes out, which will be a week from Wednesday. So, again, not really that far away, but again, just kind of keep that in mind there. Maybe I'll have something out, but probably not. So, yeah, schedule release, I think, is May 13th, if I'm not mistaken. There'll obviously be leaks leading up to that as well. But I'll obviously give you all my reaction there. That's like my real... That's right, my real wheelhouse there. But anyways, I'll be going through every single team, division by division here. Obviously, we'll start with the Bills, Dolphins, you get all that. And I'll give you guys all my opinions on all these draft classes. And I will tell you, like I said in the intro, there's definitely some bad draft classes in this one. But again, this is a huge part of the offseason. A lot of scouting was put into this. Again, I got my big board to give you guys some perspective on some of the value picks here. It won't be for every pick or maybe even for every team in a lot of ways, but that's kind of what it'll be. It's not all based off reaction to this as well. With that preface, let's get into this. Bills draft class. Honestly, I really loved it. They made again, most of the picks they made here, I can't really say too much bad about. There's some of these guys that I'm not gonna lie, I haven't really watched enough tape on. So again, that's a bad thing for really to be say too much on them. Again, I've obviously scouted all these guys, but not some of these guys. Obviously, if we look at it, where is he? Amari Reed Adams. I mean, Amarja. I watched him, guys. Trust me on that, but. You know, bro, like, who really cares? That's what I'll say there. Anyways, though, the first pick that why is it pick 3? Anyways, the first pick the Bills made in this year's draft was T.J. Parker. Again, edge rusher's definitely a position of need. You look at them last year, again, Joey Bosa was really their number 2 guy outside of Greg Rousseau. And honestly, you guys look at this Bills depth chart. Well, again, look way more into this when we get to their roster grade. Which will be coming out probably, I don't know, I haven't really finalized the schedule for that, but it'll probably be out mid-June if I had to guess for what they're going to be doing. But you look at this Bills D-line and you say, like Bradley Chubb, he's obviously an unk, but yeah, like TJ Parker is, again, a high upside guy. He gives you solid speed off the edge to where he doesn't really need to be as well-rounded, at least coming in as a rookie as you would have wanted if he was going to be their number 2 guy. So really love the pick, even though I don't really think he has the ceiling that's really worth where he was picked. But again, if you look at him on the big board, he's my number 38 guy. So again, it's overall just kind of a solid pick for me. And then you look at their second guy, Davison Igbenson. Again, round 2 pick, maybe a little bit high. Again, similar thing to TJ Parker. Maybe he doesn't have quite as high as ceiling as you might want, but again, look at him overall. He's going to be a man-to-man dominant corner. The Bills last year, outside of Christian Benford, really didn't have a reliable man guy. Again, Maxwell Harrison had his good in spurts, but yeah, he was injured a lot. And then you also had, what's his name? The freaking dude, Teron Johnson leaving. That's also, again, a big issue there. But again, they did fill a position of need. It's just more of like, what is he going to actually fit? Because they don't really think they need a true press guy at the moment. But he is a guy that will provide solid man coverage for them. Something they, again, like last year, definitely struggled with at times. Jude Bowery, interesting pick here at 102. I will say Spencer Brown definitely struggled a little bit, again, here for 4th round last year. But again, Deion Dawkins is a franchise tackle, even though he's getting older. Jude Bowery getting in there, I mean, I guess they can keep him inside. They haven't really had the greatest of guard play, but considering how well they ran the ball last year, I mean, it's just kind of a pick where I'm like, 4th round, I get it, but like, it's not really a huge need for them, but still a guy you look at the value here. If we go into the hundreds here. What the heck? Where was he? Jude. Bro, what are we doing? Jude. Not Judge, Jude. Bro, where's Bowery? Where are we at? Oh. Again, it's good value here at 67. I guess that's where I put him. But I mean, like, again, I just don't. It's like obviously a really good value pick, but again, just he wasn't really a need. Skylar Bell. This is the best pick they made all draft. Skylar Bell, I think, was the top first round prospect in my opinion. If we just look at the big board here. Yeah, he was damn near a first-round prospect for me. Getting him at 125 is actually insane. He was my wide receiver 5. Again, I understand for a lot of people, he didn't really play against the greatest of players, and it wasn't like he created as much separation as some people, as against some of these other guys. And I'm not going to act like he has the highest ceiling in this year's draft, but just simply put, they need guys to make plays, and he will be a guy for them. Again, you look at that Bills receiving room, it's still really bad. Again, in terms of, again, we're just talking about, like, big-time dudes, but, again, Skylar Bell could at least give you high potential with that. I don't care about Caleb Alarm's door, or he'll be like a backup player. Good depth, I guess. Jalen Cowart, another really good pick. I will say, I think, again, if you try to have the expectation they can turn on Johnson, you'll definitely be disappointed. But his physicality will definitely bring an element to this defense that they don't have. So I like that one as well. Zane Durant, again, we're getting like deeper in here. This is another really solid pick for them. He's not a guy you can really rely on as a true, again, run defender, but he gives you consistent pressure when he's in the right techniques. It's just the fact that I don't really think that'll be as consistent as a rookie. So this will definitely be more of a projected pick here. But again, if he gets in the rotation, he'll definitely do some damage. Torian Pride Jr., he's a guy that will be very susceptible this season. I'll tell you that right now. He's just really undisciplined, but he's a guy that is very physical, and he gives you at least somewhat reliable play in terms of when the ball is in the air. And I think for a lot of teams, that's something that, again, that's hard to find with these later round guys. Again, I understand he's at 220. Physically, he's just not really keeping up with everybody. But still, this is definitely kind of a high upside sort of pick for them. So I have nothing to say there. They drafted a punter, Tommy Dahman Jr. I think the Michigan State guy was better. But yeah, I guess they picked him there. Kind of a flyer. They picked a lot of dudes in this year's draft. They got some really solid players, though. Overall, I'm going to say a B+ for the Bills here, guys. It was a solid draft, despite maybe not, again, the most fluid of value overall. Again, it was still a really solid draft. Again, a lot of good talent throughout. Okay, our second draft we'll be looking at today will be the Dolphins. This is a team that, at least like roster-wise, is one of the worst in the league. Again, we'll really see what it looks like when I get into my grades in the summer. But again, this is just a team coming in the draft. I mean, there's not much going for them. I'm telling you right now, on the schedule release, there's not going to be many primetime games like that. But again, this Dolphins team, they need something coming into the year that really gives them some juice. Caden Proctor, I think, was definitely the guy there. I will say him going 12th overall is a reach. Despite him being a run blocker that I think could be worthwhile here, he's not a guy that I think has the highest of motors overall. I'm not as concerned about it. His foot speed is definitely a functional part of what he's going to be doing in the league. But again, as a pass protector, as a true left tackle, is he really going to be that guy for them? I don't really know. I understand Patrick Paul sucks. And again, if they're really trying to run the ball out next year, which hopefully they are, this is going to be a solid pick for them. It's just, I don't really think this is going to be a guy who's making a lot of mistakes as a rookie. I'm just going to say that. Chris Johnson, the NFL, the consensus on him, again, what the NFL really likes about him, again, we're just looking about like the executives on these teams, is that he is a first-round talent. That is a very, very flawed process, in my opinion, really just because he's just not that good on tape. Honestly, yeah, he dominated in some instances in 2025 against, let's be honest, some really shitty teams, guys. The Mountain West last year, again, there's just scrubs there. I'm sorry, there's literally little scrubs there. But him physically, his overall game just doesn't seem like something, I'm not going to say it doesn't translate, but it's just, he's not a guy that's really worth this high of a pick. Again, I've said this a couple years now. Guy like Kyrie Elam a couple years ago. Trey Amos, I said last year, but we'll see what happens with him. Jury's not out on him. But I'm just not a guy that's, again, I just don't really trust this year. You look at Chris Johnson for me. Where the hell is he? Chris Johnson. Where is he at? Where are we at? Chris Johnson. Where are we at? Not Emmett Johnson. Yeah. Like, guys, he's my 165 prospect. He's my CB15. Like, you can say, oh, he's a draft riser, but there's only so far a guy can rise without it being like, come on, guys. Like, he's just not a guy I look at for this to really be, again, a value pick. This is just, again, I wasn't surprised he won the first round, but like, if you're a Dolphins fan, this is going to probably be even worse than a Noah Igbenogany situation, if I had to be honest with you. But I will say he is definitely a guy that it'll be interesting to see what happens to him. But just in my opinion, he's just, again, I didn't think he was a very good prospect, to be honest with you guys. If they picked him in like the third round, I'd be okay with it. But he's just not. I think he's gonna get absolutely torched in the league. That's just my opinion on this. But again, I'm not surprised he won the first round because again, that was a consensus on it. Jacob Rodriguez at 43. I guess, I mean, he'll definitely be a guy that'll make a lot of tackles for them. Whether or not that'll be 50 yards downfield because he got absolutely destroyed, who really knows? But he'll definitely be a guy that'll be a consistent producer for them, and probably going to be worthwhile for a pick here. 43, probably a little high, but honestly, I don't really care. Yeah, Caleb Douglas at 75 is ridiculous. This is a guy, again, in such a deep receiver class that I don't even think like there's even really a argument for him to get picked. Even in the top, like, I'd argue, maybe not 200, but probably like 180 if I had to be honest with you guys. Just because he's a guy that just struggled to get open against press corners last year. And again, we look at him going to the league, there's a good chance that on this Dolphins team he gets a real chance to play. He's not going to be very productive in the league. He also, big concern here, at Texas Tech really wasn't much of a producer. I'm not going to, like, Baron Morton was a big, again, help with his game, but this is just a guy I don't really look at as a, like, he's just not really legit, to be honest with you guys. Will Carmiak at 87 is a little bit too rich for me here, too. I don't even think he was a top, like, 12 tight end for me. It was at least around there. He's kind of a blocking tight end in a lot of ways, and he's not a guy that's going to really ever be an explosive or really much of a threat for your team, but he's a consistent producer, so, I mean, there's something to that. But still, again, 87 is way too high. Chris Bell, honestly, guys, I think this was one of their better picks of the entire draft. He's a guy that I think will be way better than Caleb Douglas, which means, like, what are we doing here? I think for me, what is he, a top 60 prospect, something around there? Chris Bell's a really solid player. He's going to be a yak threat. Yeah, he's just kidding. This is a solid pick. Trey Moore, honestly, I don't even hate this that much. I still think that this was a little bit of an overdraft here, but he'll definitely be a solid tackler for them, and he will read out plays better than most of these other guys. Kyle Lewis went at 138. I think is probably one of the better picks, honestly, in this entire draft. He's a guy that I think I had around 80 or higher. Where was he? 46. I had him that high, yeah. But Kyle Lewis is just a very talented, very versatile player. It'll be interesting to see how they fit him in there. For me, he was a safety coming out of the draft, so it'll kind of be interesting what they do with that. But again, him and Michael Taft, I think, could definitely be future starters for them. So, two really good picks there. Kevin Coleman, similar thing to Caleb Douglas. He just doesn't really get open a ton, but at the same time, he's a contested guy. He'll be fun to watch. Sadie Torre, kind of just a flyer pick there, honestly. He's kind of a boomer bust guy in a lot of ways. DJ Campbell, I could care less about. And you also have Max Lolian, yeah. Athletically inferior to most tackles in the league, and he doesn't have much power. So, not really a combination, but he's kind of crafty, so we'll see what happens with him. But, yeah, Dolphins draft, again, as much as I, again, hated the Curtis Johnson's pick, again, you look at these later rounds, guys, they got some, like, big-time pickups there. So, I'm going to say B- for the Dolphins. It's just, again, the Chris Johnson pick, bro. But still, again, it was overall a really solid draft. All right, guys, moving over to the Jets here. You look at their draft class, and honestly, they got a lot of good players because, again, they sucked last year. I mean, that's just kind of how it goes. Again, 3 first-round picks. But I still don't think they did as much as they could have. But at the same time, they got, like, a couple of the best players in this year's draft, so I can't really go crazy with you. David Bailey at 2. We kind of already discussed this in the draft recap last week, which, again, is why I don't want to talk about these first-round picks as much. But with David Bailey, this pick for me was kind of, again, it was it wasn't Ruben. It was him or Oliver Reese. They want a guy that they think they could be a little more surefire with. But again, I kind of mentioned this last week with the Jets. I was going to mention this here. David Bailey does not fit their objective to not be the worst run defense team in the league. On top of like not being the worst defense in the league is probably the best way to put it. Will McDonald's one of the worst run defending edge rushers in the league, despite him being a very dynamic speed threat. David Bailey still doesn't have really the power I really think be their number one guy. But for number 2 overall, that is something that you can't really deal with, on top of the fact that he is also going to have a lot of struggles as a run defender. Leverage-wise, he honestly shouldn't be that much of an issue. It's more the fact that he's going to get flushed out, and there's going to be plays where you need him to make a play, and he's just not going to be able to do it. For the number 2 overall pick, I just don't think that's something you could really bet on, and you want to say that's more surefire than Oliver Reese, go ahead. But Oliver Reese is a superior athlete, a superior prospect in a lot of ways, in my opinion. Despite these guys being, what is it, 4 and 5. Again, there's not much difference between these two. But, again, Arborees, I think if we're just talking about a guy who can do more for your team, it is definitely him. So that's what I'd say on that. Kenny Sneak, again, there's not really much to say here. He's literally like, what are we going to say? The freaking, he's my 3rd overall prospect, guys. They got him at 16, like, absolute steal. He will be their best weapon on offense next year. Again, I love Garrett Wilson, but Kenny Sneak's going to be their best weapon on offense next year. I'm just going to tell you that right now. Which honestly is very interesting because the Jets honestly they have actually a pretty decent skill group now, which I think is definitely a big part of this year's draft for them. But there's really nothing bad to say here. Again, other than the fact that maybe the production wasn't really where you wanted it with him last year. He is the most athletic tight end prospect we've seen outside of Kyle Pitts in a really long time. Arguably, him and Kyle Pitts are the best tight end prospects we've seen in a really long time. I can't really say much bad about Kenny Sneak, guys. The Jets basically got the best guy on the board, and you really can't say much else other than that. Omar Cooper Jr., I understand Denzel Boston was on the board, but the Jets need guys that can really just go out there and make plays. Obviously, Denzel Boston can do that, but you don't. It's kind of like you have Garrett Wilson. Denzel Boston is a guy that can give you just really exactly that. So it's kind of like, what can we get that could be a little bit more high potential in some ways? And as much as I criticized Omar Cooper Jr. in my analysis there of him and the NFL scouting profile, wide receiver ranking, go check that out. He's a guy that's just going to simply make plays and just go out there and, again, just absolutely ball out. So, for a Jets team that needs these type of playmakers, especially at receiver, I'm okay with this kind of high ceiling sort of pick here. So, 3 first-round picks for the Jets, they're all going to be guys that are going to produce. Again, David Bailey process is his own thing. This is going to get a little bit weird. D'Angelo Ponds, again, he's short. I wasn't a guy that really thought he'd be top 50 pick. Big-time playmaker, but, like, he's 5'8". Like, a little bit high of a pick, but still, they need a playmaker at corner. Honestly, as good as Sauce Gardner is, if we're just talking about a guy, like, just objectively is going to make plays, I think D'Angelo can do the same thing. Again, much worse of a player. It's not even, again, they're not in the same stratosphere, but if we're just talking about making plays, Ponce is a guy that can do that at a very high level. Darrell Jackson Jr., okay, I guess. He's really a very boring player, to be honest with you. 103, I guess, but he's not a guy that's going to really be moving any sort of needles for you. Cade Klubnik, I don't hate this pick at all. Here at 110, I still think it might be a little bit high for him, but this is a guy that I think overall isn't going to be that hard to, I guess, develop is probably the best way to put it. Again, he doesn't really do a ton of things well. Again, you look at the Jets offense, that's going to need a guy to elevate them. He's just not going to do that. But, I mean, I guess if something goes haywire, you throw him out there, see what happens. He's definitely a guy that I don't think the whole thing will fall down on. So, at least that's good. And that's Cooper and VJ Payne. Honestly, I don't even give a crap about either of these guys. VJ Payne can't cover, and that's Cooper can't stop power. So that's kind of where those two guys are at. But you look at this Jets draft class and where they get all these picks at. Honestly, it's a really good group. There's a lot of talent here. Again, with 3 first-round picks, it's kind of hard to screw it up unless you made some bad picks, which they didn't. So I'm going to say a B overall. This is probably the most talented group so far. Next up, we do have the Patriots, and you look at their draft, and a lot of their picks, I'm just going to be honest with you guys, they picked some really bad players. First up was Kalen Lomu, again, first-round pick here. For me, you definitely, I wouldn't say a boring pick, definitely kind of like the predictable pick, though, for them. They don't really have a reliable tackle. I mean, I'm sorry, Will Campbell. But, again, all the memes and all that, I'm not trying to, it's kind of hard to say. That situation is very ambiguous with Will Campbell, so again, we'll see what happens. But again, if he moves in the guard, Caleb Lomu could definitely play tackle. He'll never be a dominant guy in the league. There's at least like numbers-wise, not on tape. It's never going to really be something that's going to wow you too much. But last year, very, very good. Again, sealing off the edge. It was very rare for to see a guy bend off of him. Same time though, he definitely doesn't. His first punch definitely isn't really great. So that's kind of a big issue there. But still, Caleb Lomu was a guy again somewhere near the first round for me, right? Yeah. Honestly, guys, kind of just a predictable pick here. Not really much to say there. Gabe Hawkins at 55 is insane. He's a guy that's going to be a low-end production rotational edge rusher in the league. I don't hate him. Again, he's productive, a really productive dude. But, like, he's just not a guy I really think that is going to be much of a threat in the league. Like, where do I even have him? Hawkins. Gabe. Where? Gab. 72. Honestly, you know what? That's not as bad as I thought it was. But still, it's not a great pick. I mean, like, we'll get out, guy. Like, Patriots. What are we doing? I don't even want to know where Raritan is. What do we say? Eli. How low is he? Yeah. Bro, is he... Bro, these tight ends. Like... he's not even on my freaking board, guys. Like, get out. This isn't as bad as we'll get to the Jags. That's not as bad as that, but it's pretty damn close. And then I get out Karen Pruntree. Like, why he's not even a draft guy for me. Crownover's an interesting guy because he actually does have like upside in terms of the athleticism, and he does do a really good job at anchoring. But he is a guy that is very technically flawed on a lot of plays. So like, you know. And then Obiazer, honestly didn't really watch enough of his tape to really get a total conclusion on him, but from what I saw, especially in terms of coverage and instincts, he definitely has that, so that's good, but still not a guy that's going to really be too impactful. And then Morin, I mean, like, I guess, bro, he's awful. Jam Miller, honestly, this is probably the most intriguing pick here. Jam Miller is just not a guy I really ever seen that good, being more than a bum in the league. This just kind of feels like, again, you look at the Texans last year with Woody Marks. That's just kind of how it is here with Jam Miller at Alabama. He's just not a guy that's going to really elevate your offense, to be honest with you guys. And like last year, he was absolute shit. So like, what else do I need to say? And he also had Hutchins at BC. He definitely is pretty explosive, but he again has absolutely no plan, and he gets absolutely destroyed against the run. But yeah, he was one of the better players in that BC team last year, which really isn't saying that much. But yeah, Patriots, they really didn't make many good picks. Now, honestly, they probably only got like 2 or 3 guys in this year's draft that'll ever really be much of a very productive for them. So honestly, guys, this Patriots draft was quite disappointing. I gave it a C-. Well, last year's Bengals draft does not look very good, and it really wasn't that good at the time. Again, you'll get Shamar Stewart there, of course, who should have a better year this year, hopefully. But Bengals draft, without a first-round pick, they honestly didn't do that bad of a job. I still don't think they did, again, a ton better than last year, but at least was somewhat respectable. Cassius Howell at 41 was probably their best pick overall. I don't know exactly where I had him ranked, but he's definitely a guy that's going to give you very versatile looks in terms of your pass rush, because he can attack vertically very well, but still be able to threaten the inside with the counter. So those 2 things I think will definitely translate well to that as probably their 3rd edge rusher this year. So definitely really good value there. He was my 55. So again, overall solid pick. Skylar Davis, this is pretty crazy, to be honest with you guys. He is, at least in zone, will be a guy that will be very productive. But the Bengals have had those guys in the past couple of years. I'm sorry, guys. That Bengals secondary has been brutal to watch. So I don't know how much Skylar Davis is really going to do there, but he'll for sure get to play. Connor Lewitt, 128, honestly, was a really solid pick. Again, really I understand got the injury last year, but he'll be a guy that can really anchor as a run blocker, and also get plus value as a pass protector when Joe Burrow, decides to move around. Kobe Young at 140, I honestly liked a lot. I think he is definitely going to be their 3rd receiver if he is able to elevate the way you think he can. But again, you look at that Bengals receiving room right now. Did Yosivas get injured? Not Bengals.com. Bengals depth chart. What are we doing? There we go. Where's Yosivas in there. I think Kobe Young can definitely challenge there. It's just the fact that maybe not again with the comfort there, but he's definitely, again, what was he? He was only my 14th receiver, I think. Yeah, 111. Like, this is a guy that's going to be a solid player. Like, again, we look at the range this year, which I haven't really talked about a lot. But, yeah, the range is basically how good I think this guy will be. Again, it's very fluid. It's probably the best way to put it. Like, just going to say, yeah, he could be pretty good. Again, that could obviously mean a lot of different things. So, it's a little bit more ambiguous than anything. But still, I think, yeah, he definitely could be pretty good. And, like, look at a guy like Yosivas who's like that. Really just more depth of receiving room. I honestly have no problem with the pick. Brian Parker, again, picking another center, I guess. He's not going to really play center. He's definitely a little bit more versatile than you'd think. He's a solid pass player, which I think is huge at center. So you can kick him off to guard. There's at least some survival instincts definitely there. But he's definitely inferior as an athlete, which could definitely give you some issues against a guy like Kalijah Kancey, for instance. Jack Endry is a tight end. I mean, very boring pick, but he'll definitely be a guy, again, if he can block well enough, will definitely get in there. And then Landon Robinson, he's actually a pretty good player, too. He got kind of outmatched there. Back in, what year was it? Yeah, it was 2024. But I still think he's a guy that can give you plus upside overall. Still, this draft class, I think it was honestly not, again, a lot better than last year. Again, there were still some questionable picks in there. But overall, picked up some pretty good guys. So we're going to say a C+ for the Bengals. Alright, now on to the Browns, who followed up last year's draft, in which they got a lot of quality players with another really good year. This year, I think, though, it was more of them actually picking up just straight-up better players than anything. You look at this Browns draft class, guys, I mean, again, really across the board, they got a lot of great players. Spencer Fanout, definitely a little bit of a reach here at 9. But they did need a tackle, and he, at least from their evaluation, was the guy they wanted. So I'm like, you know what, go and get it. I still think Leonard Freeland definitely would have been a more optimal pick for them, but still, Fanow is a very reliable pass predictor that is definitely refined in a lot of ways and can give you some upside as a run blocker to kind of really be able to seal off and kind of actually throw a couple more punches than you'd think. So he's definitely a solid prospect, but again, at 9, it's a little bit of a reach for me, but still, not a bad way to start your draft. Casey Concepcion, everyone's talking about the draft issues. He's a playmaker. They needed a guy like that. He's definitely a higher outside guy like Zach than a guy like Zachariah Branch. I'm happy they took him here because I don't think he would have been there if you a couple more picks later. But still, returner for them. He will be a huge part of their offense next year. Another guy that will be, and I think will be their number 1 receiver next year, is Denzel Boston. He was my 4th overall receiver in this year's draft. The fact we got him at 39, I definitely think it was a steal. These two guys will be, them and obviously Quinshon Judkins will be that offense next year, and it gives whoever's going to play quarterback, Deshaun Watson, at least a chance to not be as bad as you might have thought a couple weeks ago. Emmanuel McNeil, 58, huge time pick for them, or big time pick, my bad. They now have 3 of the or one of the better secondaries in football now in terms of again playmakers. Again, you obviously got a guy like Denzel Warren who's been even better than I think really just become underrated. And then obviously Grant Delpa is a big time playmaker, and then Emmanuel McNeil Warren in there, where he won't actually have to be as much of a free safety. I think it's going to be huge for them. This guy that will be a very productive rookie, and honestly one of my favorites for defensive rookie of the year. Austin Barber, this is probably the one pick that I think was a little bit of a reach here. A lot of these Florida prospects do get overdrafted for one reason or another. I'm looking at a guy like Ricky Pearsall, but so Ricky Pearsall again hasn't really the verdict still. Jury's not really out on him yet though. But yeah, Austin Barber, he's just not a very good player to be honest with you guys. But there is something to him at least being a rotational run blocker because he is a guy that can definitely seal off and make it very hard for specifically linebackers to maintain their gaps. Parker Bradenfield is definitely a big time basher. He's also very good at facilitating certain concepts, but I just don't think, again, at least pass pitching wise, he's got that is playable at the moment, but he's definitely an upside pick for them in the future, especially for an offensive line that's kind of in a transition phase. Justin Jefferson, really solid pick here at 149, very reliable prospect, doesn't have the highest of instincts. I think it's a big issue with him, also limited athletically. But for me, I still think he's a guy that's going to be a solid guy for them, so there's not really too much bad to say about him other than that. Joe Arroyo, really love this pick for the Browns. I think he's definitely a more well-rounded guy than Harold Fannin. Obviously won't be their number 1 tight end, but should be a solid backup. Taylor Green, I mean, honestly, yeah, to take a swing here, pretty good pick. I mean, again, he's definitely the guy we're talking about, who really knows there. Yeah, definitely something there. And then, yeah, Carson Ryan here at 248. This is a guy that I think could be a fullback. We'll see. But yeah, he could definitely be something for them. But honestly, guys, this Browns draft class, they got a lot of really good players. And outside of the Barber pick, there's really not many bad things I can say here. And again, you look at the top of this year, these first 4 picks, probably the best 4 picks out of any other draft. That's why I'm going to give them an A. Honestly, this is probably my best overall draft in this year's class. Well, I did say that Browns had the best overall first 4 picks. I honestly think for the Ravens, and this is kind of where they fall off, their first 4 picks were just as good as the Browns, but after that, it kind of got a little bit bad. But anyway, Ravens' first pick was Vega Ione. I talked about this last week. Again, it's just kind of a Ravens pick. There's not really much else to say. He was my number 1 interior offensive lineman this year's draft. He will be a big part of their run game, hopefully taking a step up this year from a run game last year that, despite Derrick Henry having a big-time season, arguably better that 2024 season, really wasn't put to full use. But still, Vega Ione here, I mean, there's not really much to say. Great pick. Zion Young at 45 is definitely a high upside pick for them. This is an edge rushing group last year that was probably the worst in football. I mean, at least objectively they were. If we're looking at, again, the statistics there. But still, this is a pass rush that really just needs guys that can give them just straight burst off the edge. Zion will do it, one of the better first steps in this year's class. I think that'll definitely, again, kind of put some sort of floor for him in case, some of the other developments don't really come along. Jacoby Lane, this is where we get a little bit wary here. I don't know if 80 was where I want to pick him, but he's still a guy that, at least we're talking about a slot receiver, can give you a little bit more upside than a guy like Zay Flowers in there, where, again, Zay Flowers can kind of attack vertically better. But Jacoby Lane, I think, would definitely be a more defined role for him, again, kind of help out Zay to a point where he doesn't really need to be the guy winning every single route, which, again, is going to really help out Zay Flowers because he's a guy that definitely has had a little bit too much pressure on him the past 2 seasons. Elijah Surratt, I honestly love this pick, too. I honestly think this is a little bit more of a schematic pick than a guy like Jacoby Lane. Maybe I'm just talking about slot. We're just talking about a guy that can be a contested catch guy for them because, again, Lamar Jackson, let's be honest, hasn't really had this big-time physical receiver in the offense really ever. I guess Rashad Bateman could have been that, but he never really turned into anything like that in terms of, again, kind of an artificial role made for him. But yeah, Elijah Surratt will be a guy, at least in the red zone, will definitely be a solid target for them. I think they'll be able to transition away, really away from just having Mark Andrews be that guy for them. But still, Surratt's a solid pick. Matthew Hibner, there's really no other way to put it. This is just not a good pick. I don't even want to know where Hibner is on this list. He might not even be on here. Hibner. Are we even here? No, bro, just not a very good pick, guys. Chandler Rivers, another guy that just shouldn't have been here. I watched this guy in person against UConn. He got carved up by Skylar Bell. He's just honestly not an NFL corner for me. I still think he's a guy that could be at least somewhat valuable in terms of a special teams package, but at 162, I mean, it's just kind of like you could have got better players here. Josh Kuzulas, yeah, just no. I mean, why are we taking these tight ends, guys? They suck. They're just not very good. Adam Randall, this is definitely probably their most intriguing pick, honestly, this entire draft. Again, if you don't know about Adam Randall, he used to be a receiver, kind of was a scrub, turned to running back last year and was probably the best player on that Clemson offense outside of the receiver, Antonio Williams and the other guy that'll be coming in next year. But Adam Randall, guys, really solid prospect here. I think this is a really good pick for them. Honestly, could definitely be their third down back next year, considering some of the struggles they've had with that in the past couple of years. They took a punter here, the Michigan State guy. I've heard this is the best punter coming out of the draft in 30 years, so we'll see how good he is. And then they took some other dudes too. Bernstein's not Bjornstein. He's not a bad player, but I've not watched too much of Benny, so yeah. But as you guys see, the tone of this definitely turned a lot more negative after the Surratt pick, and that's kind of where I think this draft falls off. But overall, guys, I mean, they still had a really crazy good first 4 picks. I give this draft a B+. Again, it's just, I think, what separates from an A is that the overall draft just kind of falls off. So that's kind of, overall, still a great first 4 pick. All right, we're now on to the Steelers, and this team's draft honestly had some really good picks here, but at the same time, there's some other ones that have to be rage bait. Max Einecker, or whatever the heck his name is. Honestly, guys, this is for them. I really just think it's going to be their kind of project of sorts. He's going to probably have to start as a rookie, which isn't ideal. But still, this, again, Broderick Jones, again, I'm like, bro, why did we take Broderick Jones 2 years ago? That's kind of what I think there. But, ceiling-wise, he's going to be a guy that's going to be a dynamic run blocker, and as a pass blocker, he can really shut guys down. It's just the fact that his first punch is just not accurate whatsoever. And again, look at the other side, like a guy like Troy Fouts now. I think those two could definitely benefit from giving each other each kind of their play styles and kind of molding those two things together because they're basically polar opposites. So, Max will definitely be a really good player in the league. It just comes down to him, developing. So we'll see what happens there. 47, Jeremy Bernard's going to be a really reliable receiver in that offense, but I already think they have that with Michael Pittman. So again, how much is this pick really worthwhile? Again, DK Metcalf, he's their number 1 guy. So again, Jeremy Bernard doesn't have much again on his plate, but I just worry that he'll turn out into kind of a ineffective guy, like a guy like Calvin Austin, despite him obviously being a very consistent player. That'd be Jeremy Bernard. There's just not much of a ceiling here, so 47 just seems a little bit high for me. But again, for me, he's a very reliable prospect, so I think that's good. But again, if the Steelers really wanted to go for that, I think he could definitely be a little bit later here. Drew Howard, 76 is egregious. Drew Howard sucks, guys. I mean, I guess he'll turn into something. Nothing good, but at least it'll be something. Dalen Everett, really solid pick at 85. He'll be a good boundary guy for them. It just comes down to if he can be at least somewhat viable in zone to, be worthwhile not having another guy like Joey Porter Jr. out there. Jennings Dunker, really solid pick. I mean, guys, these two picks are really a lot. Jennings Dunker is a really solid run blocker. And it'll definitely give them a little more tenacity than they've had, again, especially last year, for a run game that really struggled. Other than that, though, these last, these 3 picks, guys, none of these picks I even think are, even rateable. Because, these 2 guys, or 3 guys, let's be honest, guys. All these guys suck. I'm sorry, that's just the truth. Robert Spears Jennings, he's good enough in coverage where I think he'll work in this defense. But, again, they really like the receiver, what is it called? Their safety's coming down and making tackles in line, which I just don't think he's very good at. In space, he's fine. He's obviously a playmaker, but he's just not a guy I look at least coming in at Oklahoma last year where you really want him, in close quarters because he gets washed out very consistently. And then, Heidreich, again, he was, the Navy guy who had 15 touchdowns last year or something like that. But he's, again, a very big, really fun pick here, but how much will he really turn into? Again, we'll just have to wait and find out for that. But for the Steelers, I said a B-, because, again, what are we doing here, guys? Come on. All right, guys, and our next draft was the Colts draft class, and this is a group that, despite them not getting their 53rd pick, I'm telling y'all, guys, they got some really good players. First of which was C.J. Allen out of Georgia here at linebacker. He was my number 2 overall linebacker in this year's class, and he was way up there. 15th overall, they got him at 53. 53. And I'm telling y'all guys, the Colts need a high-impact linebacker. Not only will C.J. Allen provide that, but he'll also be one of the more reliable players on their entire defense, even coming in as a rookie. This is a guy that I really think is a bona fide, really solid player no matter what's going to happen. He's probably one of my more guarantees. I don't know if he'll be a true star, but this is a guy that I would honestly say is bust proof. The fact they got him at 53 is just kind of crazy to me. Again, he'll be really good for them. Next was A.J. Holliday at 78. Other than a guy like Caleb Downs, he's probably going to be the most impactful safety in this entire draft. Again, you guys look at a guy like Nick Cross, who again I kind of have like a divisive thought on, just because of the fact that, again, obviously now moving on to the Commanders, but he was a guy for them that was kind of boom or bust early in his career, then really turned into kind of a more dynamic guy that made a lot more plays than he made mistakes. A.J. Holliday is very similar in that way, other than the fact that I think physically he's not at really quite to the level as Nick Cross, but in terms of them needing to replace him, A.J. Holliday I think will really be able to do that, and that'll be a huge help for them, considering how much cheaper he is. Other than that, though, moving down here, Jalen Farmer. This is probably the one pick in this year's draft that I'm not really the biggest fan of. He's just not a guy I really see that's going to be very consistent on them. Same time, though, he will be a good enough run blocker, again, for the foreseeable future, which is good. But, yeah, will he start? Definitely a question to note. Again, but you look at this Colts running O-line depth chart right now. Again, guy like Matt Goncalves is just a better player right now, so that's what I'll say on that. But other than that, we keep moving down here. Bryce Boucher is a really good player. For again, what you're getting here, 135. As a you look at him in coverage, that's why you have C.J. Allen. But I will say, as a run defender and being a guy that can be very gap sound, that'll be huge for them. Because again, last year that was kind of a big issue towards the end of the season with them. George Gumps is 156. I think he's definitely an interesting pick. For me, he's a guy that's definitely technically flawed. But he still gives you the upside there that you can kind of deal with. Again, 70.8. But I think again, you look at he should be good in a year or two. Again, like. Overall, we're talking about the range on that. Caden Curry at, 214. He's definitely more of a power-based guy that'll give him at least some playability. You could at least play him in that sense, but it'll be interesting to see what actually happens to him. And then Seth McGowan gave this pick was kind of like a, whatever pick, but honestly, he's a pretty good running back. I'd argue better than Jam Miller. And then Deion Burks to end the draft isn't bad either. Obviously, can't run on a route for crap, but I mean, he'll make plays, so I mean, that's good. Wait, what the... I mean, okay, bro. But anyways, yeah, Deion Burks, honestly, not a bad way to round out this draft. Honestly, guys, I'm going to give an A-. There really wasn't one pick outside of, I guess, the Jalen Farmer pick that I really had many issues with, and they got a lot better in this year's draft. And I'll tell you what, guys, the Jags did not get a lot better in this year's draft. I don't want to be like everyone else and say this draft was the worst in the league, but, I mean, it just was. And again, this is kind of where it starts. I mean, did I have this guy on my board? I really don't think I did. Nate Borax, or whatever heck his name is, out of A&M. Nate. What? Oh, yeah. This guy wasn't on my board. They took him at what? 56? I mean, the guy's like... There is no justification for this pick. This is just the worst pick in the draft. Like, it's just not even close. Like... This is a really bad pick. Albert Regis is 81. I don't think it's as bad as a lot of people are thinking, but if we're just talking about like a guy that can like critically affect an offense, this is a guy that's just not going to do that. I think as a run defender, he'll be productive enough where you can deal with it, but the Jags don't need another run defender. You look at their defense right now, Devin Lloyd is a guy that is going to be, again, your primary look at as a run defender. Devon Hamilton, who's been here forever, or is it Dwayne Smoot, not him? Devon Hamilton is the, again, nose tackle on this defensive line. A guy like Albert Regis really doesn't give you a lot. Ruka Warra, that was a bad pick by the Falcons a couple years ago. He's a guy that is very more profile to a guy, I guess a guy like Eric Armstead, but Albert Regis is not a dynamic guy that I think you pick here. I still think it's a solid enough pick because he will be a competent run defender at the end of the day. Wait, where did Dwayne Smoot go? Dwayne Smoot. Where'd he go? Oh, what the heck? Yo, this guy's niche, I'll tell you that right now. Yeah, Dwayne Smoot. He's been on the Jags every year of his career since 2017. Saxonville, bro. Longest tenured player. I don't know. I guess they're not going to re-sign him. Maybe they will. Who knows? But yeah, too much talking there. Albert Regis, kind of a meh pick. Pregnon, honestly, I like this pick a lot. The Jags' run game last year, despite it being a lot better, especially with Travis Etienne, they're still not that great. I think Pregnon as a run blocker would definitely be an impactful guy for them, but he'll be an adventure in terms of his pass protection, which is something I think they actually did pretty well last year overall. A guy like Anton Harrison and honestly Cole Van Lanen did very good jobs last year. But yeah, we look at that run game. It's going to be not very good. I'll just say that. The Jags, again, they did not get better this year's draft. Jalen Husky, honestly, guys, this wasn't the worst pick either. It's just the fact that he can't cover, and they need a guy to cover at safety. So, yeah. And the other Wesley Williams, this is another terrible pick. Oof. And then, I mean, these last three, honestly, are just, they're just not very good, guys. But honestly, guys, I will say this draft isn't, I'm giving it an F, because, I mean, this is probably the worst pick I've ever seen. But Regis, I can definitely get around. Pregnon, honestly, was a decent pick. But Husky, just and then the rest of these picks are just awful, too. So, it's just very, very hard for me to actually, take this anything seriously. I could have picked a better draft than this, guys. That's all I'll really say. There's really no excuse. Again, there's not enough, with these two picks to really make up for anything else they did to kind of, especially this first pick, to kind of make up for it. This draft was just so bad. Okay, guys, I'm going to try to keep this Texans one short. We talked about a lot of Kalen Rutledge last week, but again, you look at that offense last year that was really lacking any sort of physicality, again, as a group, and that kind of that identity of that offense that didn't exist. And also C.J. Stroud sucking most of the year. I think that Kalen Rutledge brings a good tone setter for them, despite him definitely being a flawed prospect. But at 26, I can kind of get around what they're going to do with this. Still not the pick that I think they should have made, though. Caden McDonald, great pick here at 36. They honestly couldn't have gone wrong here. Texans really haven't had a dominant defensive tackle in a little bit now. He will give them that and then some. And also, just simply put, he's one of the better run defenders in this entire class. I'd argue even better than Caleb Banks. Again, he's a legit, proven, bona fide run defending defensive tackle. And that is something that I think is a guarantee that you can take here at 36. And he will be a part of that. Again, as good as that defense was last year and as good as they were as run defense in terms of... we're just talking about being sound. He does that to where your run fits don't always need to be perfect, and it gives you a lot more room for error than even they had last year, which is as good as you can get. Marlon Klein at 59, I'm not going to lie, is a huge reach, but he's at least a guy that will be explosive enough as a player and will be reliable enough to where you can play him at a pretty high rate in terms of a snap count. So, in terms of value, I could see this pick turning out to be pretty good, but at 59, again, this just wasn't a great pick, which is kind of what I'm going to say there. Nawai Wialiu, very raw guy. He can't really block that well overall, which is going to be an issue, but he's a very powerful guy who's very athletic, so that's only going to be an upside pick for them there. So, honestly, again, fourth round, you can kind of get around, but still at the same time, I mean, we're talking about a guy that's going to take a little bit to get going. Wade Woodaz, 123, he'll be a good player. He's boring, but, there's not really much else to say there. Coverage, he'll be pretty below average, but he'll be better than what they've had in terms of consistency at linebacker other than, who the heck is this guy's name? Henry To'oTo'o. He's really the only guy that can, again, better than him. I guess he's Al-Shire, too. Kamara Ramsey, 141. Definitely a pretty under-the-radar pick here with this one. You're getting a guy that's going to be, honestly, pretty versatile in coverage, but more the fact that, again, he'll be a reliable attacker in space, which they last year didn't really have too consistently. And, again, a guy like Jalen Petrie, as dynamic as he is, Kamara Ramsey will kind of help him out. I honestly think he could be better than Kalen Bullock. Maybe not off the bat, but definitely in the future. Lewis Bond, what are we doing? And then Aiden Fisher, I think, was a decent pick to round this thing out. Again, it was kind of a mix of some really bad picks. Not really bad picks, really just reaches. Again, you look at, what's his name? Not Caden. Klein. Yeah, again, reaches here with Klein at 172 to, again, a guy like, where is he? Lewis Bond here, but at the same time, again, most of these other picks are, pretty decent. Again, they really didn't get many. All these guys should be at least solid players. There's none of these guys that I really think are going to be, I would say, really bust or won't really pan out. So that's really where you get the B out of this grade. So, yeah, B for the Texans. Okay, now we're on to the Titans, who, again, are coming off back-to-back 3-win seasons. Carl Tate was their first pick. Guys, for me, this was kind of I guess, bro, sort of pick. They needed something, I'd say, on offense. Again, impact guy or a elite edge rusher. But they decided to go with the dude on offense. I mean, Carl Tate still, for me, was, what was he, a top? He was pretty damn high. Yeah, he was my number 10 overall prospect. So, again, I kind of talked about this earlier. I'm not going to try to be too redundant here, but he'll be a guy that I think could definitely be a number one guy in the future for them. I just don't know how much a rookie. Him and Cam Morton really work together. We'll see what happens. But, yeah. Again, they got a number one receiver. How much can you really complain there? Keldrick Folk, I actually really love this pick. He's a guy that is so fluid off the edge and gives you, the desired bend that the Titans really love, to where I do think there's going to be a legit ROI on this, right off the bat, which for a lot of these other guys, again, it's maybe, no, this should definitely be a pick that pans out very quickly, but as a run defender, there's going to be some flaws there for sure. He will get washed out very consistently, and I don't think he sets the edge really well enough, and there's going to be times where he isn't able to counter if he doesn't win initially. So that's what I say on Kendall Folk. Very similar to some of these other guys in the draft there, but he definitely has a little bit more of a dynamic play to his game, which is huge. Anthony Hill should definitely be a starting linebacker for them next year. He's too good in coverage on top of being a very consistent tackler for that not to happen. His instincts still are a little bit flawed, though. He definitely can get influenced the wrong way at times. But still, again, this is a guy you're going to have to play, and honestly, a really solid pick. I mean, like, look at where Anthony Hill is on me. I think he's, what? Yeah, he's my 6'2" guy. Like, this is, again, perfect pick here for them. Like, value's good, too. Carmona, I'm not the biggest fan of because of the fact that he just is kind of slow and fat. He's not fat, but he's definitely slow on certain plays. But honestly, guys, when he's able to engage, he really doesn't get beat too often. So that's what I'll say there. Singleton, interesting guy. I'd say a brave pick for them here. We'll see what he ends up turning out to. He's going to be probably a damn near first-round pick preseason. So I've already talked a lot about him. Again, go back to the running back rankings to get a full analysis on Nick. But again, who really knows what will happen? He should be their backup for sure. I mean, if he's not able to do that, I don't know what to tell Nick, bro. And then you have Jackie Marshall. He's definitely a violent-handed defensive tackle, kind of a rare trait from what we've seen in this year's draft. But his power game is definitely more limited than you like, and he definitely doesn't get off blocks their greatest, which is kind of an issue. Pat Coogan, I don't care. And then also Jared Karnak, who is, again, another tight end that's just not very good. Honestly, guys, this draft, there's a lot of good picks. I love their first three. It kind of gets a little bit off the rails after that. But still, in my opinion, this is definitely a draft that they, again, got the guys they needed on top of maybe some more high upside guys than you might have thought they would have got. So I'm going to say a B. Again, overall, a lot of good things. All right, guys, this Broncos draft, I'm going to just start by saying this wasn't going to ever be a class that I ever think was going to have that high of a ceiling in terms of how good they could have done. Because, again, when your top pick is at 66, it's hard to get these, legitimate guys. Like, this guy's going to be a star sort of thing. We look down here, guys. Started rookie make Pro Bowl or two, something like that for Chase Bezantis. They're just not going to get a guy like that at 66 very consistently. So I wasn't too mad, but the guy they picked is just not really doing them much favors either. Like Ani Meniam, I don't even want to know where he is on this board. Where are we at? Like, is he even remotely? He's my 283, guys. Like, they put him at 66. Like, this just isn't helping anything. I think he should be at least somewhat good enough as a guy that can get off blocks to be a effective run blocker, but run defender, my bad. But he gets moved way too consistently. The penetration was a big issue with him last year, and he has no power to his game as a pass rusher, and he has maybe one or two decent pull and swipe moves that I think could work out okay, but he is not a threat as a pass rusher in the interior, and that's really what I saw on tape. It's just not really a good combination for him. He's definitely athletic enough where I think he could definitely overcome that, but this is a guy that needs a lot of work to even become playable. So that's why at 66, I just didn't really see any value here. So, I mean, this is just not a very good pick in any way. As bad as I talked about the Jags pick with the freaking Bizzacharis, what the hell his name was, this one wasn't really much better either. Jonah Coleman, honestly, a really solid pick. Again, they have R.J. Harvey there in the backfield, but R.J. Harvey had his struggles last year. Jonah Coleman, I think, provides a little bit more power to his game and maybe a little bit more versatility. So those two definitely in the backfield, I think, was a good combination. I don't really see the Broncos trying to run away with any sort of. Again, they're going to definitely have committee this year, so I think it'll work fine. Cage Casey, well, I don't know if he'll be able to start this year. He definitely has potential in the future, too. He's a little bit too antsy at times that I think will come up as an issue, especially against a guy like Nick Benito, especially in training camp. But if that kind of gets resolved, there's no reason he can't be an average right tackle for them. Justin Jolly, love this pick for them. They need a guy that's going to be a playmaking tight end, and he will be that and a lot more. So we'll see what happens with him again there. Miles Scott, honestly, this is just not a very good pick. Dalen Bentley is a guy that could actually be, I wouldn't say a deep vertical threat, but they're just talking about down the seam. He can definitely do that for you. Still not a guy that has really consistent hands, though, which is kind of an issue for him. But for a guy that's not really been much of a blocker, again, similar to a guy like Justin Jolly, both those guys could definitely be a duo in the future for them. Rod Murdoch, honestly, I like this pick a lot. The issue is he didn't play anyone good, and he misses a lot of tackles. So, kind of a flyer sort of pick for them with Mr. Irrelevant there. But honestly, guys, this Broncos draft, despite not really having much of, again, a chance to get much talent, they honestly did a good, decent enough job. Still, though, they didn't really walk out with a ton, so I'm going to say a C+. Okay, guys, now we're on to the Chargers, and their draft had some very interesting picks. First off, obviously, Akeem Messidor, he was one of my, I think he was top 20 pick for me in this year's draft off the big board. Obviously, he was the most developed pass rusher in this year's draft. He had 5 or 6 moves that you could legitimately see him using in the NFL. Again, with him older, though, that was a big kind of knock on him and also the injury history. But still, big-time breakout season last year. Chargers are getting a guy that will absolutely be that for them next year. It's just the fact of he's older. Also, you aren't freaking Khalil Mack until he's below 2 in the offensive line. But anyways, still addressed a question for the future. Jake Slaughter was their second pick. I love how they say O-line like he's going to fix everything. He's a center. They do need center. Their entire interior of their offensive line is a mess. Again, Mekhi Becton had a down season last year after a big-time breakout 2024 in a lot of ways. And then, obviously, Zion Johnson was injured for most of last year, too, so not many good things going on there. Jake Slaughter should be able to address something. Will he be a difference maker? That remains to be seen. Brennan Thompson, that was a massive reach for them at number 105. Again, he's fast, though, so who really knows? Again, remember Jalen Guyton? That's really the last time Justin Herbert threw the ball downfield, so we'll see with that. Travis Burke is a massive reach right there on that tackle there for Memphis. He really wasn't good at all last year. It was really just the fact that he's big, and he didn't give actually a ton of pressure, but he's not very good. Genesis Smith, I like that one. That was a good pick from them there. Definitely some decent value there. He just can't tackle, so hopefully Derwin James is the one doing all that. Nick Barrett, interesting pick for them there. That's definitely a guy that could be pretty shifty on the interior. It's just the fact that he could get moved a little bit more than you want. Then you, of course, had Logan Taylor and Alex Harvey rounding out. Neither one of those guys are very good either, so I guess that it. Really look at this Chargers draft, though, and there's just a lot to be desired with what, again, their goals were going in. For that reason, we're going to stick at a C for them. Yeah, they fix the damn offensive line, guys. All right, guys, next team up is the Kansas City Chiefs, almost done here with the AFC. And their draft was, again, big-time revolving around trading up for whatever reason with the Browns, up to 6 here from Mansour Lane. Safe pick for sure, but was he my number one cornerback on the board? Absolutely not. Was he my number whatever pick on this year's draft? No. But, again, he's a safe guy, a lot more safe than a guy like Jermon McCoy, who was my number 8 overall prospect. So, yeah. But you look at a guy like Mansour Lane, he will be a solid man guy for them. I don't know if he'll ever be as good as Trent McDuffie, which is why did they even trade him in the first place? But still, you look at what the Chiefs did here. They needed a guy to fill a hole for them, and that's what they did. I just don't know if Mansour Lane is the 6th best guy in this year's draft. That's what I'm saying. But they fill the need. It's kind of like more of like a mid-range sort of grade if we're talking about overall first-round picks, like I talked about. But maybe a guy that'll impact them right away. Peter Woods, love this pick. Him and Omar, again, Chris Jones eventually decides to hang him up probably pretty soon. Him and Omar will be a very, very good duo. The problem is neither one of them are really too competent enough as run defenders, especially a guy like Peter Woods, who didn't get off blocks really the way you wanted him to last year. Really came on to the fact that his primary shed move was a swipe and club, and that just didn't really work a lot when he got when the O-lineman got into his grill, which I think is something that he'll definitely get better at in terms of getting a little bit more power into his game. But still, Peter Woods should be a guy that will be a very high impact player for them. It's just kind of like there's kind of like a seeping hole with him and Omar Narnlot, with the fact that neither one of them I really think are reliable enough run defenders. But still, he was the guy to take here for sure. Mason Thomas, he is a guy that, again, despite the fact of him just not being really much of anything other than just an absolute specimen, is a big-time playmaker, and if he is a rotational guy that isn't expected to be their number one edge rusher, will be a highly productive guy for them. That's what I see with him, and that's something you could definitely, I wouldn't say risk-taking, but definitely work around here at 40, where he was a guy that I think was definitely worthwhile. Just that fact that he is not a guy that you want to put in a situation where he is going to have to make more plays than I think he's really, I wouldn't say used to, but if you put him outside of his comfort zone, it's going to not end well. He's just not a very well-rounded player, but he is the he has the best Ben of this year's class, so you can't ignore that in a lot of ways. Kennedy, he was okay last year, but there's just too many plays where he's getting beat off the line. I just can't really get with that. Emma Johnson might be their backup next year. Really love that pick for them there. Cyrus Allen's interesting for sure. Isn't a vertical threat, though, which is kind of an issue for that Chiefs offense at least, which I think they should go want to go with a couple other guys. But, I mean, for 176 in the 4th round or 5th round, you can get around that. Nussmeier, he'll be a backup in the future, I guess. Overall for the Chiefs, though, I didn't love this draft because they didn't really make the greatest of decisions, but they still got a lot of solid players, so I'm going to say a C+ for them. Okay, now on to the Raiders, who had a very, very interesting draft. Again, everyone knows about the Mendoza pick. There's not really much to talk about there. That's been exhausted way before the draft even started, so I'm not going to really talk about this at all because, again, it obviously was a good pick. Trading Stukes, this is for the one pick in this year's draft that I think kind of breaks any sort of possibility it could have got an A+. That's because this is just not a guy for me that is worth taking at number 38. I could understand a 3rd round pick on him because he's a guy that is, I'm just going to be honest, he is freaking really hard. And there's not a ton of guys in this year's draft that... What are we doing? What was he? He's bad in coverage, I can tell you that right now. But there's not many guys that can hit the way he can. Again, he has a high ceiling for that reason, but he is really bad in coverage. Like, the numbers, it's really bad. On top of the fact that I don't think his playmaking ability is sustainable, but it is something that could definitely elevate him as a player. There's a lot of, like, there's just a lot of things that need to happen for him to actually reach his potential, which is just not something that I really think is going to happen. So that's why this is really the one pick that I just, but still, he does have a high ceiling. You look at Crawford here. He should be a good player, very reliable. I think, what was he for me, 76? Very stiff edge rusher, which is a big issue, but he very consistent process, which I like a lot from him. Trey Zahn, really solid pick there too. Obviously, the big pick here was McCoy. He was my number 8 overall guy. Everyone had him drop because of the ACL injury, or surgery, which will definitely have to happen again. There's expected to be another surgery, so I'll say that. That's why I dropped to the 4th round. But I mean, they got the best cornerback in this year's draft, guys. There's only so much I can say other than that. Like, this is an absolutely phenomenal pick. Just off of value, at least. Mike Washington Jr., I like this. They don't have the running games, you got Genty, but they didn't know much else outside of that. So Mike Washington definitely, I wouldn't say change the pace, but it'll be a good second option there. Dalton Johnson, didn't love that pick, but honestly, for where it was and who they picked after that, don't really care. Masses will be a guy that honestly could definitely see starting this year. Too big of a playmaker. You look at him and the difference between him and Stooks. Stooks can't cover. He can definitely cover. So you can definitely see the things there. Malik Benson, interesting guy here at Oregon. He'll definitely be a yak there for them. I think he'll be a little bit more of a limited guy in terms of the route tree. But again, you look at what Mendoza does in terms of the hot routes. I think that could definitely turn into something there. And you had Brandon Cleveland at the end rounding things out. So overall, guys, I give this draft an A-. They just had 2 picks in here. Just the value wasn't there. But again, I'm not going to say it cancels out with the McCoy thing, but it kind of really does. So they had some big-time picks here, and I think that'll work out well, just the fact that I don't think Stooks will really be the guy for them. Okay, guys, moving on to the Commanders, and their draft had a lot of big-time dudes. First off was Sonny Styles at 7th overall. He was a guy for me that I had in, what was he, my he was my 9th overall guy. They got him at 7. Some people have this turning into a guy like Jamin Davis in terms of just a straight-up athleticism, but Jamin Davis wasn't even as athletic as Sonny Styles, and Sonny Styles actually has translatable instincts, so there's really nothing to say. That was a really good pick. Antonio Williams at 71, honestly, was pretty damn good value. He's a guy that, again, you look at that receiving room and you're like, they need some sort of consistency outside of Terry McLaurin. He can be that guy. Also creates a lot of separation that goes under the radar, and I really love his route nuance on tape. So that's a big part of him, and I really think that'll be a huge reason for why the Commanders can be a more legitimate passing attack this next season. Joshua Joseph, again, really just kind of like a meathead sort of pick. We need a guy that can go out there and blow some things up. He can definitely do that, but the awareness is definitely a little bit out there. Kaytron Allen, I actually like this pick for them. The Commanders really just don't have a good running game right now, guys. JCM, you can talk all you want about him being an explosive guy, but he's not really a legitimate threat all the time. Kaytron can be that at times. It's just the fact that I don't really think he breaks tackles to the clip where you really want that as a big part of your team. Matt Goldman, honestly, guys, this isn't really a pick that I care much for. Just because he'll be, honestly, an average guy, you don't really have to worry about him. There are times, though, where he might get, thrown around a little bit. And then they picked some dude here. The freaking Rutgers quarterback. He's got a hose, I can tell you that. But reading defenses, that might not be his thing. So, while it was only 6 picks, guys, I think this Commanders draft, honestly, there's really not much bad things to say because they picked the guys they kind of need. I will say, again, the Stevens pick, Joseph's pick is a little bit out there. But, again, they had 2 higher picks and then kind of lacking after that. But still, they picked the guys they needed. They got better. So, again, I'll give it a B. Now we're on to the Cowboys, who had a very peculiar draft. There we go. That's the right word. Peculiar draft for me. Obviously, their first pick was Caleb Downs, and I don't think you could have wished for anything better than that. He's the best safety prospect we've had in a pretty damn long time, and I think he'll be worth all of that. So that's really good for if you're a Cowboys fan. But at the same time, you look at that pick outside of that, though, it's kind of some pretty big reaches. First off, Malachi Lawrence. Malachi Lawrence, for me, if I'm not mistaken, I talked about this a lot last time, so I'm not going to try to exhaust it. But he's not a guy who I think is particularly... What are we doing? Bro, what in the heck? Am I not spelling his name right? Bro, what are we doing? There we go. No. What the heck? 2, 3. There we go. He's my 95 guy. Like, I already talked about this. Like, the value just isn't there for him there. Again, I can kind of see where they're going with it, but still, it's just a huge reach. Jay Sean Barham, I guess. He hits hard, I can tell you that, especially on tape. But it's more the fact that I think in coverage he can be a guy that can get down, kind of layer out the field and make it hard for quarterbacks to put those balls in those windows. And doesn't closes really well. But again, we just look at the overall process with him, the fact that he just simply can't beat a freaking below average guard at Mountain Landis State or whatever they play against. It's just kind of infuriating. But still, he's a guy you can kind of see working out there. Drew Shetland, really solid pick for them. He'll be a good depth tackle. Devin Moore, I guess, bro. This is kind of just like a meh pick, I guess. LT Overton, definitely probably one of the more higher value guys. Very versatile. It'll be interesting to see how they use him. Should definitely get a pretty decent role this year. And then you had Anthony Smith. That's not a good pick. Oof. So, again, some really intriguing guys here for sure, guys. But overall, it's still a draft that has some pretty big reaches. So I said a B- here for the Cowboys. Again, the Caleb Downs pick is pretty damn good. Now we're on to the Philadelphia Eagles draft. Again, everyone is asking how the heck did they get Malik Benson? Not Malik Benson. Malik Makai. How did they get Makai Lemon at 20? That's a very good observation and a very real question to have. But the reason they did it is because the Rams are morons. So, yeah. Anyways, that's obviously an A-plus pick. There's no other way around it. Eli Stowers, the problem here with this pick is I don't really know if it fits their offense the right way because they need a guy that can at least get somewhat in line, and Eli Stowers cannot do that. But at the very least with him, he'll be a guy that'll be a legitimate threat and probably better than Dallas Goedert in that part of the draft. So, I mean, or part of the game. So, honestly, I can work with that. Next up, we did have the Markel Bell pick, and that is a brave move. Let's just say Carson Beck, there were times where he needed to call an RPO because Markel had no chance. But still, he's a guy that is absolutely massive and will be a good enough guy for Jalen Hurts is probably the best way to put it. Cole Payton, I mean, I guess, bro. Micah Morris, honestly, this is probably one of their better picks, too. He's a big-time... we're just going to say aggressor, and it'll probably work out. Cole Wineski is a unathletic dude who is smart. That's usually what the Eagles like. And then they got some random dudes here, and obviously this guy who never played football in America. But I've heard he's very athletic, so we'll see what happens with that. His RAS score is pretty damn high, so we'll see. Yar Bernard, he never played, he got picked over Diego Pavia. Just telling y'all. But, yeah, that's definitely Eagles pick for sure. But anyways, yeah, this draft, there was a lot of, what do I say, innovative picks. There we go. But, in terms of actual value, I'm going to say probably a B+. Alright, guys, now on to the Giants, who, again, had their fair share of big-time guys they got. Again, the first one, arguably the best pick of the first round, that was Arvell Reese. He was my number 3 overall prospect. They got him at 5. Or 4, my bad. So, again, it really wasn't that good. But, yeah, a lot of people, like, didn't really see this actually, again, coming to fruition just because of the fact that Arvell Reese is a very versatile guy that has, again, the highest potential in this entire class. I think we can go to that. Giants questioning, like, where are they going to put him because they have 3 other guys. Again, I already told you that's a good problem to have. Again, just really overall for the Giants, they got a great player who still obviously needs a lot of work to develop, but last year he did basically everything you could ask. So we'll see what ends up happening with him, though. Francis Maliaga will be the right tackle of the future. They now have probably one of the higher upside tackle groups in the entire NFL. Again, Andrew Thomas, what is he now, like 28? He's like in the very prime of his career. They're really, again, trying to invest in the, again, future of this team, which I like a lot. Still, they could have got a better receiver, so I mean, I guess. But still, Francis Maliaga here, you can't go wrong with this one. Colin Hood at 37 was a overall pick that I could get behind because the fact that he at times last year looked like a legit first-round talent. The problem was there were other times where he kind of got overmatched. And he's not a guy you look at that has kind of this dominant enough profile to kind of overcome some of those deficiencies. So that's kind of where there's a kind of a push and pull with this one. But he's still a guy you look at that should be a solid player for them. And they desperately needed someone in that secondary. And he was arguably the best guy on the board. I would have liked them to take Emmanuel McNeil Warren. But if we're talking about guys that might have been a little less risky, this would definitely be the guy to go with. Malachi Fields, I love this pick. He is perfect in that offense. There's some concern that he could turn out to a guy like Kenny Golladay, considering the Giants haven't really developed these guys that don't really get the most separation. But he's more of a big play guy that can honestly box out really, really well, but still be a possession enough guy to where there's definitely a floor into his game, which I think is huge. But as a big play guy, he is definitely going to be a threat that the Giants really haven't had. Again, you look at a guy like Darius Slayton as maybe as a translatable result with him, but even then, I think there's no way. He's going to be a better player than Darius Slayton. I can say that. Bobby Travis is not a good pick. Like, the Giants, again, coming into the draft, they needed this big-time defensive tackle because they don't have any. This is not a guy that's going to really do it for me. I will say there weren't many great guys on the board, so again, this is definitely a flyer pick for sure. He's good enough against the run where I think there could be something here, but there's absolutely no pass rush threat, and even then, he's still a guy that gets displaced way more than you'd like. J.C. Davis, really no complaining about this pick. He's kind of a low-risk sort of guy for them. Not really much to talk about. And then you look at Jack Kelly. He's a guy that I think had... Oh, he's not even on here, is he? Yeah, he's not, bro. He's not even on the board, bro. But they picked him, what was it? 193. So this is just a guy who wasn't very fast, but still, he had at least somewhat a productive year last year from what I can remember. But definitely a blitz throw, which is big too. But yeah, that's the Giants draft. I think, yeah, we're going to say a B+ here. The Giants got some really good players in this draft. They really like the needs they filled. It's just the fact that I don't really think they didn't get fully capitalized in some of their places. Still, though, they filled a lot of needs. And now, guys, we're on to the Chicago Bears, who definitely had their fair share of big-time guys they picked up. First of which was Dylan Thieneman at 25. This Bears secondary, definitely apparent towards the end of the season, was not up to par. Really, none of their corners had that great of seasons. Again, you look at a guy like Kevin Byard, who made a lot of plays, again, downfield. Still wasn't really getting your true free safety that he was a couple years ago. Jaquan Brisker obviously had a really tough year as well, so they need to get a guy in there that can be a true boundary-setting kind of center fielder, and Dylan Thieneman can absolutely be that. Was he a guy that I really think, was he my number 2 safety in this year's draft? No, but he's still a guy that I absolutely think was worth this pick. Again, he was number 18 for me, but again, there's really no complaints about this pick at all. Again, it was a really solid pick. Next up was Logan James, a center at 57, was definitely a little bit of an interesting pick in my opinion. Value-wise, I don't think this was here, but still, this is a Bears team that, again, Drew Dahlman retired. They needed a guy that can kind of fill somewhat of the similar role. They're very similar guys, Drew Dahlman and Logan Jones. He's not going to be anywhere as good as Drew Dahlman was last year, but still, as we look at him as a run blocker, he's very, very good at anchoring and kind of making it hard for these defensive tackles to kind of disrupt upfield, but as a pass rusher, still definitely a guy that can again combat some of these faster guys, which I think is huge. So there's a lot of good traits you gotta like with Logan Jones, despite the fact that he overall is definitely kind of a diet version of Drew Dahlman, which is definitely okay. So I like the way they filled that need. Sam Rouge, he's not going to be much of a receiving threat, but they don't really have that true inline blocking tight end. Again, I like Colson Loveland like that, but for what this Bears offense needs, it's not that. So Sam Rouge could definitely fill that role, and I think that's honestly fine there. While he's not worth the 69th pick, which is pretty nice in this year's draft, it's definitely interesting to see them Bears going with a move like this to kind of fill a schematic issue. Xavier Thomas, honestly, this is not a very good pick at all. This is probably the one pick in this year's draft that I really don't agree with at all. But I think it cancels out kind of with Malik Muhammad because this is a guy at 124 who is going to be a very, very good player. He should be their number 2 cornerback going into next year. The reason they got him this low, I mean, there's definitely some interesting things with how he played last year, but this is his overall profile. He's got the length. They definitely fit well there. Keyshawn Elliott, another really solid pick. He's not a guy that I really love in terms of his coverage abilities, but you look at that Bears linebacking group last year, they needed just someone who has a pulse in coverage, and he definitely does that. Again, obviously he's a much bigger playmaker as a tackler, which is huge too. So we'll see how that comes up there. And then obviously Jordan Van Denberg is definitely not my favorite pick here. But overall, guys, outside of that Xavier Thomas pick, really every other pick they made was very, very good. And for that reason, I gave them an A- because, I mean, guys, like, again, it's kind of hard to find a bad pick outside of that Xavier Thomas one here for the Bears. The Lions coming in this draft really had 2 distinct needs they were trying to fill, and honestly, I think they did a pretty good job with what they were trying to do. First of which was their Taylor Decker kind of situation and what was going to happen there, and it looks like Blake Miller is going to be the guy to fill the role. And while that definitely was a reach here at 17, Blake Miller for me was still a first-round talent who is going to be, he could be pretty good. The reason I say that's kind of a thing with him is because there's definitely a little bit iffy with terms of how technical he can be. He is definitely a guy that gives you is a little bit worrisome with his overall punches. There's definitely some punches he makes that are questionable, especially when he doesn't land them specifically in the outside shoulder. He kind of get beat on the ghost move pretty consistently there. Run blocker, he's gonna be very, very good though, which is kind of why this pick, again, you could definitely get around it because Jahmyr Gibbs needs a guy that can consistently steal the edge. Blake Miller can do that. And also, I think there's going to be a little pressure off him because Panay Sewell's going to be doing most of the big-time stuff. So, Blake Miller's in a really good situation here. I think this was a solid pick overall. Derek Moore, very high pick for him. I will say there is some merit to this because you look at a guy like Aiden Hutchinson, who obviously, coming in to the NFL, was expected to be a Pro Bowl player, I'd say. But I don't think anyone was thinking he was going to be as good as he is. Him coming out of Michigan, the pipeline that these that the Detroit coaching staff has with the nearby colleges, I think is something that definitely has some validity to it. And Derek Moore being a guy that is a raw player who isn't, again, exactly the most talented in any way, despite being pretty productive, is good. I just don't like his profile as a prospect. That's really why that's here. And he's definitely a guy who's a run defender that will struggle in the league. So, well, this is definitely a very interesting move for the Lions. It's still something that you can see working out. Jimmy Rolder, nothing really to say here. He'll be a very boring linebacker for them that will be right beside Jack Campbell doing everything that he doesn't want to do. Basically, that simple. Keith Abney, stiff hips is really where this comes in. The Lions have had a lot of cornerbacks with those issues the past couple years, and that has not worked out. The thing about Keith is just doesn't give up separation. It's kind of like a paradox of sorts with that. So I like that a lot. It's just how much of the hip's going to be an issue in the league. Kendrick Law, do not care about that. Skylar Gill Howard could be an interesting defensive tackle. He's kind of a movable guy, and he gives you very, very quick pressure, which I like a lot. Still not a guy that's been overly productive, though, so keep that in mind. And then you got Tyree West, who is just kind of there. Overall, for this Lions draft, there's some picks that I think are a little bit more questionable than others. The overall value, though, I think computes to a B-, so I'm going to roll with that one for this one. Overall, the Lions did a pretty good job. Now to the first team in a little bit that didn't have a first-round pick this year. That is the Packers, and what they ended up doing was get some really good players. First off, Brandon Siss at 52 is huge. They now have a legit guy that can kind of help out, a guy like Isaiah McDuffie at linebacker. Wait, is he even on the Packers, or am I just geeking out? I swear he is, guys. No, yeah, he is. What the heck? Obviously, they have Edgerrin Cooper and Zyler Franklin, but still, they need a guy in that secondary that can kind of be their dude. Brandon Siss, I'm not going to say he's going to be their nickelbacker, but there's really no reason that he can't be better than a guy like Javon Bullard, who, while in coverage, is definitely a little superior. We're just talking about straight-up physicality and as a run defender, and just overall prowess. Brandon Siss can absolutely be that. He should at least be starting by the end of the season. This is a guy that is a high-value, high-upside, not even high-upside, high-floor pick. And he will be a guy that will be a big-time guy for them in the future. Chris McClellan here, yeah, this is definitely a little bit of an interesting pick because he's not a guy that's going to really ever be as productive, I think, as he ever was, again, at Missouri last year where he did 6 sacks. The pressure rate, I think, still will be decent enough where this can kind of be a worthwhile pick. But yeah, as a run defender, there's really nothing to say other than he's going to be really good. Danny Dennis' son, he's a rotational guy that really isn't asked to do anything more than kind of be in a platoon with Lucas Van Ness if worse comes to worse. Then he should be pretty damn good. I think he'll definitely be an overall productive guy in his career. Jagger Burton, don't care about him. I don't really care about Namani Jackson, but if we did say something about him, he is definitely a little bit more of a high-profile dude, and who definitely had his struggles last season. But there's still something to his game where you can kind of get behind what he's going to end up doing in the league. But definitely give me a guy that's going to be an uphill battle to get any sort of playing time as a rookie. And then you got Trey Smack. I mean, yeah, he's absolutely freaking phenomenal, guys. But this guy's an absolute beast. But anyways, we look at this Packers draft. It's definitely an interesting group overall. I really just don't think the Demani Jackson pick is going to work out. But other than that, I mean, really none of the other picks aren't, other than they're going to work out. So, that reason for Packers is going to be a B+. This is a really solid draft. There was really no reaches either. Alright, guys, now moving to the Vikings draft. And this was definitely not a very good group. Again, the big highlight is Caleb Banks going in 18. I will say, while it was a need for this Vikings team, I mean, like, 80.1, it's not that big of a reach, but it is still a reach. You just don't, this is a little bit too high of a pick for me. Again, if you would have traded down and still got Caleb Banks, that would transform this grade. But then, just take him at 18 and kind of just saying that that's the day. It's just not something I really like at all. Jake Golday, another reach here at 51. I don't even know if they needed linebacker this much to take him here. He's still not a bad prospect, man. He's very competent. He's going to be a guy in coverage you can really, you're going to really want to see. But I still don't even know if, like, this is a fit either. So, kind of just a weird pick overall there. Dominic Orange, 82. Honestly, they're one pick that I really like a lot. Tiernan, I'm just going to say right now, guys, Kyler, and that just doesn't mix. Tiernan's a guy you want to be a guy that is asked to sustain and not have to make these quick punches with that Vikings offense, with what Kevin O'Connell is going to want to do. It just doesn't really mix the way I'd want. It's just kind of a peculiar pick. As a run blocker, you can definitely see some things progressing well, but he's not a guy you really want to be putting in these situations where he's got to be the one winning quickly. It's just not a very good combination. And then all these other picks are just a bunch of... I mean, Claiborne, I could definitely see being okay, but they could have, honestly, if they would have picked a running back in the second round, I could have seen that happening. But still, after Jacoby Thomas, honestly, guys, none of these picks are really, I really see even being worth talking about. So, for a draft that honestly just had a lot of reaches and still some like weird things going on, I got to give this a C. I still think there were some decent guys, like Dominic Orange was a really good pick, but it's just the fact that I don't really think all these guys fit into the scheme on top of the value of it not really being good in the first place. All right, guys, next on tap are the Bucs, and yes, this entire draft is built off the Ruben Bain pick, which was, in my opinion, the best pick of the first round. He, again, was my number 2 overall prospect, if we can get to him. Yeah, 91.1. The biggest reason I think he fell was obviously his arm length. Which is kind of stupid because like 3 of the 4 best edge rushers in the league have like arguably below average arms. So I'm like, I mean, I guess, bro. But yeah, Ruben Bain, this was their big time guy. They got him. He's gonna be the number 1 edge rusher going into next year, and he will be an absolute beast in the league with his power and speed and finesse combo. He's got basically everything you need there. But he's absolutely gross. All right, Josiah Trotter, 46. I am not a fan of Josiah Trotter because I just don't. I think he lacks the instincts to be a consistent player in the league. That's why he's at 189. Same time, though, that's not the consensus in the league. Said it similar to a guy like Chris Johnson. I'm not surprised he was picked here. There is a world where, at least if we're talking about a guy that can have a successful career, for, again, like I said, a guy that's 189, he can definitely be that guy. He's a very raw prospect that just doesn't have the, again, at least intangibles, in my opinion, to kind of make that happen. Still, though, he's got a high ceiling. That's where kind of the range comes in. I might have graded him out this way, but there's definitely a world where it can get better. So that's why I don't think this pick was as bad as a guy like Chris Johnson. Ted Hurst, this was a really bad pick. This is kind of why you look at how great start with Ruben Bain, then you take this dude. He's a physical threat. He can make plays downfield. He gets a decent amount of separation, yes. Played against bad guys, and simply put, he's just not a guy that I see really turning into much. So, 84, what are we doing? Keontae Scott, no issues with this pick. He'll be a good player in the league as a depth guy. DeMonte Capehart, another guy I could see being pretty good. The difference is he's not going to get much pressure for you at all. So, I don't know. If you turn like a guy like Logan Hall off it and you get him in there, expect kind of a downtick in your overall pass rush. Stroud is not a good pick. He's just not a guy I really see turning into too much. Is he my last guy? He might be. Let's go all the way down. Oh, it's Charles Dew. Never mind. But, yeah, he's not great. Bowers Sharp, we saw him somewhere in there. But yeah, he's also pretty interesting too. But overall, you look at this Bucs draft class. Great start with Ruben Bain. Kind of fell off a little bit with the other picks though. Still a B though, because I mean, like the Ruben Bain pick's just that good. Okay, up next we are on to the Falcons, and their draft was definitely definitely a lot more flashy than I think some of the other drafts. First off, Avion Terrell, brother of what's his name? Oh, I can't find it. AJ Terrell, yeah. Wasn't a first-round pick, not as good as his brother, but those two potentially could be next to each other for the next couple years, which would be pretty cool. But Avion, overall, is a very solid prospect. The problem with him is he's not really in man coverage, I think, as jazzed up as some people, I think, really trying to make him out as. Still, though, he gives you very, very quality consistency, and especially in zone, has high-level instincts to read out plays and not give up the big plays, probably the best way to put it. But still, there's something a little more of a ceiling that I think are capped to his game than I think, at least we're talking about the initial evaluation of him would, again, really necessarily say. But still, very intriguing pick there. Zachariah Branch at 79 is another interesting pick just because of the fact that, he sticks in the state, and also with what sort of kind of enhancement to his game would really be make him, that next level. He'll obviously be the returner. A lot of screen passes for sure, but they really only have one. Sure, Jesus, they really have one down to a threat in Drake London right now. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. Daniels, that's a bad pick. Just saying that right now. Same thing with Thompson. Neither one of these guys, I don't think were in my top 250. Harold Perkins kind of makes up for it. This is kind of where I go off the rails here. Where was Perkins for me? He was my 21th ranked player. He could be pretty good though. Yeah. Reason no one really liked him is because no one really knows what he's going to play, and he kind of sucked a lot of last year. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, Harold Perkins is a very dynamic guy off the edge who needs to learn how to get off the quarterback. Because if he's able to do that, him, James Pierce, Jalen Walker could all be really deadly. So we'll see what happens there. A lot of depth was gained in this class, but obviously you could see three of these 5 picks. I don't really see turning out too much. Still, though, the Falcons got 3 guys that I absolutely think will be centerpieces of their team in the future. So that's why it's going to turn out to a B+ for them. Alright guys, now on to the Panthers, and their draft was pretty damn good. First off, their first 2 picks are addressing things that will be noticeable for sure next season. Monroe Freeling, I think, will be their franchise tackle for the next 10 years. I really like the idea, if Ikembu Kwanu does not have a good contract year, that Monroe go in and replace it, which you might be saying, well, they took him with the top 10 picks, so what are we doing with that? Still, though, Monroe Freeling, I think, again, this guy is ceiling as high as this guy. Big board-wise, he was pretty damn high there. I think, what is it? 82.8. He's my 20th overall guy. So there's a lot, or 19th overall, my bad. So there's a lot going into that. That's good with him. So I like that a lot. And Taylor Moton is obviously on his way out soon. So keep that in mind, too. Lee Hunter, obviously, a guy like Derek Brown in there isn't really going to say, like, why do you have Lee Hunter? He's a premier run defender. But both those guys in there, guys, for a run defending unit last year that honestly wasn't as good as you needed it to be in a run defense that outside of, I'd probably say 2022 with Derek Brown really hasn't been that great. It kind of gives them actual stabilizing force because Derek Brown was really their only guy as a run defender like the past 4 years, and that's just it's not really a good way to win games. So Lee Hunter kind of adds that extra oomph that can actually translate this into an overall run defense that isn't just about say hey, Derek Brown save our gaps, basically that. And also the run fits will be a lot more easy with them there too as well. Chris Brazzell, they were looking for a receiver. They were patient. They were able to get this guy with a lot of value. Chris Brazzell is a downfield threat. He's a lot better than Xavier Legette in that way. I still don't think coming out of the draft that he'll be as good as Xavier Legette really at all. We're talking about the projections. But Xavier Legette being a major issue is definitely something that I think he could fix, which is good. So they got a good player there. Will Lee, love this pick, guys. Will Lee is a dog. It's just a question of how much will the J.C. Horn kind of help him out? That factor kind of help him out becoming a dominant player in his own right. And how much will that limit his overall recognition? Who knows? Sam Heck, love that pick too. They don't really need a center, but injury issues and all that, so we'll see what happens. And he's definitely a lot more reliable than Austin Corbett. Other than that, though, this guy I've never heard of, and Zakai Wheatley is a very, I'm telling you right now, very underdeveloped pass rusher. He has like a spin move, and that's about it. So there's something there. But yeah, he's obviously a safety. But yeah, he'll definitely be using this blitzer. But other than that, guys, that's the Panthers draft. I'm giving it an A. They really did a good job. Like, crushed the draft. Alright, guys, last team in the NFC South before we get to our last division in the NFC West. We have the Saints and their draft. First pick they made, I'm kind of pissed he didn't fall to the Rams. That's Jordan Tyson, #1 receiver for me in this year's draft. There's really no complaining about this pick other than the fact they have 2 guys that have had injury issues to an extent, obviously with Chris Olave and the concussions, and now Jordan Tyson. They have arguably one of the more talented 1-2 combos in the entire NFL here. Again, Tyson for me was the 7th overall or 6th overall prospect. They got him at 8. So I mean, this is just a legit guy for them. They needed a big time playmaker. They needed. Again, I honestly think 2 elite receivers is better than one number 1 and then 3 number 3s. So they did their thing here. He'll be an absolute beast in the league. There's really nothing else to say than this is a great pick. Again, some issues obviously. Christian Miller at 42 is definitely a brave pick in my opinion. He's not a guy I really think is a functional enough pass rusher to kind of get around this. But at the same time, there's definitely a floor to his game that I think is a lot better than some of these other guys. And obviously, him and Brian Breezy would definitely be a good combo because he's a lot more stiff and kind of hard, kind of just like straight up compact than a guy like Brian Breezy, who obviously is a pretty bad run defender. Oscar Delp, love this pick for them here at 73. He will be a very good combination with Juwan Johnson. Kind of allows them to play a lot more 12 personnel, which is something they haven't really been able to do to a really, really high level guy. To a really high level with a guy like Foster Moreau is the backup. Jeremiah Wright, not a good pick. Bryce Lance, love this one too. This is where we can get even more depth. This is a guy that just, again, you look at him with Trey Lance, but he had a very productive career there at North Dakota State. The reason I didn't love him, and the reason he was my wide receiver 16 was because of the fact that I didn't really think he ever was as dominant as I think he kind of needed to be there. But still, he'll be a great player for them. Lorenzo Styles, he's very overrated. That's simple. He's just very overrated. He's trash in coverage. He can't tackle in space. Just those 2 things don't go well. I will say he closes well on the ball, but how much does that really matter when you're already beat? Barry and Brown, I guess, bro. I mean, 190 is a little bit brave, too. TJ Hall, is he draftable? I guess he is. Yeah, you guys can see that the draft kind of falls off here, but they had a really good first couple picks here. That's why they get a B+. But yeah, the great draft for the Saints. And spoiler alert, guys, none of these next drafts are any better than this. Guys, the Cardinals thing's a little bit geek, so we're just going to use this. But this Cardinals draft, really looking at it, you're going into this draft and you think this Cardinals team looks terrible, which they do still. But it was really just about them getting better enough. Did that happen? I guess. But the fact you used, what was it? That was a good voice crack. What was it? 8 other 10 picks, something like that in terms of the ratio on offense was very interesting. Jeremiah Love with the first pick. Honestly, I have no problem with that. He's the number 1 guy in this year's draft. Still, you have James Conner and like literally 4 arguably starting caliber running backs. I mean, like, obviously Love, but like, look at Benson. Is he a starting caliber running back? No, but he's your solid backup. Like, you still have James Conner. Obviously, he's on. What is he? 31 now. 30. If you have him, he's about to be 31. So, James Conner, Trey Benson. These are 2 dudes here. You can work with it. Again, you brought in Tyler Alligator. It's arguably your starter. You have like a 3-way running back system. You didn't want to have last year happen again. Well, you have 3 guys here, and it's not going to happen again. Jeremiah Love, bringing him in, it's like too much. You're investing too much into something that really wasn't even a problem in the first place going into the draft. But still, they got the best player in the draft, so who really cares? But that's kind of the process I'm thinking on there. Chase Bizantis. This is a fine pick here. This is arguably their best pick of the entire draft. Chase Bizantis is a guy that fills their biggest kind of, I guess, hole on offense, and that's the fact they don't really have that entire offensive line in cohesion. Tackles are fine. Enough. Furlot is a great center, or I cannot pronounce it, but it's got a start to an F. And they have, again, Hernandez, is he even there anymore? No way he is. Yeah, Solomon, that's what they brought in. But yeah, Bizantis is going to play over Adams. But all y'all need to know is, I guess Wilkinson's fine, but their offensive line is now good. So that was, at least we're talking about an objective pick there. That's really good. Carson Beck, if he turns out to be good, if they throw him out there to start and he ends up being good, great. Carson Beck, I think he's my QB4. I think I had him in the 80s somewhere. He's a guy that can play, though, and can support an offense, which is big. But if we're talking about a true ceiling and actually being a more than average starting quarterback in the NFL, it's not going to happen. Yeah. All right, Caleb Proctor. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. This guy really wasn't even a threat at the FCS level. To an extent, he obviously dominated. But, you know, not the greatest of picks. We'll just say that, to be fair. Then after that, you had Reese Virgil, which it's just, again, 143 is absolutely insane. Carson Scherer, I don't... He's good enough where I think he could be good because of the fact that he has the playmaking ability in certain situations, but overall, he's just not a guy I can see being on the field too often. And then Jared Williams rounded out. They did not maximize their picks in terms of the defensive side of the ball. I don't really think this defense got any better, and for that reason, this is just not a draft I can really get behind that much, despite them getting some good players. So that's why I have to see. It's a frustrating draft for me because I think they still got good players, but they didn't fix the things they needed to fix mostly. I got to preface this before we get into the Niners here, and you guys can obviously see the grade. I'm not as keen on saying John Lynch always, reaches. But, yes, this is Sean Stribling pick. Massive reach. He is a one-on-one demon who has high-level downfield speed to be able to separate. Wait, am I not spelling it right? It's Strib, right? Stribling. What's happening? What's happening? Bro, what? Dazon? Come on, we gotta be there somewhere, right? I don't know, this thing's geeked. All y'all need to know is, yeah, Stribling was a reach here. He is a one-on-one guy, though, and I think he could be number 2 receiver, right? They still got Juwan Jennings, so yeah. Filler need for sure, but this is not the guy to take. The Denzel Boston's on the board. Like, what are we doing? Romo Hyde, that's an awful pick. He was productive last year. We'll say that. But I don't think I saw him win once with a true, and I'm telling you, a true dynamic second step into any sort of speed to power combination at all last year. And if that doesn't happen, he will be a guy that will, I'm going to say, struggle to get on the field in the league. Kalen Black, another bad pick. what are we doing with this? Grayson Holland, honestly not that bad because he can, facilitate some certain gaps, which is good. Craver Willis, no. And then you got freaking Price Lock, which honestly is a decent pick because he's pretty fluid. I think, though, that if he can be a little bit better in his back pedal, we could see this guy become a solid guy for them. You got to look at a guy like Dalman or Lenore. I think he's definitely better than Sam Womack, so we'll say that. Jalen Duggar and Henry Cruz is starting this out. So, again, the more I look at the more it looks bad, which I want to give him a D, but I'm going to say a D+. This was definitely the second worst draft in the year, guys. It's like not even that bad, that close. I mean, just reach after reach and just bad pick after bad pick. All right, we're on to the Rams, and again, everyone's going to talk about, again, the big shock of this draft with the Ty Simpson pick. We're just talking about for the future. Yeah, this is going to be probably going to pay out pretty well. My opinion, Ty Simpson was the best quarterback in this year's draft, not by much by any means. I just think that he processes defenses at a very, very high level, and that's something that, again, is honestly harder to find than a lot of people would want to admit at quarterback in this year's draft. And while I think they could have got a lot better players than Ty Simpson here, this pick for the future will end up working out pretty well. But still, 13th is insane for this guy. Max Clare, this is going to be a good pick. Again, I don't want to keep repeating the consensus on him. Yeah, a lot of the good things that are going to happen for him will be in the future. Do I expect him to be an immediate impact for them this year? Honestly, yeah. But to what extent? Probably not as high level as maybe this pick was worth. But still, he's definitely a guy that could definitely justify getting picked in the second round. And he is a big play guy for sure. He was Purdue's best receiver for like 3 years. Like, what are we doing, bro? Keegan Troust. For the future, yes, this is going to be good. There's going to be a lot of influx in terms of what this offensive line is going to look in the future. Depth at offensive line is always a good thing. This is a guy that definitely could see developing pretty well. It's just the fact that, again, he's more of an experienced guy than anything, and he's definitely a little bit older. Keep that in mind, too. CJ Daniels, is he the Rams' third receiver? Probably not, but he's a red zone threat, which is good enough for me. Tim Keenan, I honestly like this pick a lot, but he's still not going to be a guy that's going to be very high impact. He's going to be a depth guy for you, probably for the rest of his career. But for a 5-pick draft, I definitely think they could have picked some definitely more talented guys, especially with this 13th pick. But for again, the CJ Daniels thing, we'll see how that turns out. He could be really good, which would be awesome. But for the Rams, I'm going to say a C-, just because, again, it wasn't very good. Again, the Ty Simpson pick can only be justified so much. But I don't want to really overtalk this too much. We'll see how this pans out. Last draft we'll be looking at today before, again, the schedule release will be reacted to next week, probably on the Wednesday or the Thursday. We'll see. But anyways, Seahawks, first round pick was Jadarian Price. There we go. He'll be backing up Zach Charbonnet in some sort of role. He was number 2 running back in this class, and at least in that way, you can kind of see that happening. He was my 40th overall prospect, so there is something to this, but he still wasn't a guy that I thought was... Okay, there was just such a big gap between him and Jeremiah Love that I think it kind of gets overlooked with it. Still, though, they addressed the need, and this team just won the Super Bowl, so you can kind of, just let them do their thing. Definitely a guy that I don't ever think will be a first-round running back talent, just because those guys need to be number 1 guys, and I don't ever think he'll be that. But he's a very good player, so you can kind of see where this is going. Bud Clark at 64, very underrated pick. He is a safety that has elite coverage profiling. He's though, and he is not great in terms of his open field presence, on top of the fact that he doesn't really navigate upfield great either. So I don't really care, though. He makes up a bunch of big plays. He's been second big all Big 12 back-to-back years. Ton of big pedigree with this guy. He will be a big part of that team's secondary. Julian Neal, hate this pick. He's got brick hips, and yeah, that's just not great. So that kind of brings things down. Bo Stevens is a quality pick there. And then you got Henderson and Fuller, both not good picks. I will say Fuller actually wasn't as bad as something I think I would be saying, but still, he gets a lot of help with McNeil Warren there, and then you got two dudes that yeah, honestly probably didn't even evaluate well enough. But anyways, this tried to get a B-. Really like the talent they got at the top, but again, they won the Super Bowl, so who really cares? But that's all I have for y'all here. Hope you guys enjoyed this crazy long draft grade here. But yeah, those are your 2026 team-by-team NFL draft grades. Yeah, this will definitely impact the team resumes that will come out by the summer. But yeah, getting kind of the prep for the season at this point now. Again, looking in the future, I'll obviously be giving you guys my reaction to the schedule. Then I'll be ranking every NFL team schedule by division. That'll come over the next couple of weeks. And then obviously we'll get into roster grades, which will take us all the way up until tier week before the season starts. So yeah, it's crazy that's already turning around. But yeah, that's basically the start of May for y'all. But yeah, those are that was 2026 NFL draft. And yeah, hope you guys enjoying these Game 7.
Down 1, Barnes on the move, toss out, Barrett 3, off the heel.
It's a shot that never should have happened for Toronto because of the turnover by Schroeder. It's a result that you would think